Thanks everybody for joining us. Always wonderful to see my favorite catalogers today on the call. And we are here to talk about the exciting things that are coming to cataloging in Evergreen 315. I'm Katie Greenleaf Martin. I am the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Integrated Library System, and I do have Natalie Arnold and Elizabeth Davis here with me today, who will be helping me monitor the chat and answer any questions as they come in. As people are joining, if you do want to introduce yourself in the chat, please feel free. And just to note that because we are recording, if you do have your video turned on or you end up unmuting to ask a question, you will be reported, and so the recording is going to go up on YouTube. So I will ask folks to turn their video and or their audio off if you don't want to be recorded. And we will have a time for questions after we have turned the recording off. If there's anything that people want to unmute and ask that doesn't need to be in the recording. And of course, you can always use the chat to ask questions as well. So I just have a couple slides and then we're going to get straight into it. The first is just to remind everybody that we could not do the work that we do without the support of our friends at the Office of Commonwealth Libraries and funding through the Library Service and Technology Act. And what I'm going to do today is I'm introducing us and our topics right now, and then I'm going to run through the upgrade schedule, and then I'm going to demo everything that's going on that's different in Evergreen 315 and show you all of those things. And we will take questions throughout. We'll also have some time for Q&A at the end. And then at the very end, I will give one last reminder about the upgrade checklist and make sure you all have that link. This, as I mentioned, and all of our other trainings will be up on YouTube once we get the recordings processed, so you can always feel free to come back to it. I'm also going to refer to our documentation quite a bit, and I'll show you where you can get to that. So today we have our cataloging training. Next week, October 15th, same time, same channel, will be reports training. Then we're off the next week because the PALS folks will be at the Pennsylvania Library Association annual conference in Erie. But 2 weeks after the reports training is our CERC and OPAC training. And then November 12th is a Wednesday. That is the day before the upgrade. And so that's the day that at the end of the day, you're going to want to make sure everybody's logged out of Evergreen. And you're going to want to make sure that you've downloaded any templates, any other things. If Natalie or Elizabeth, you could throw the link to the upgrade checklist in the chat, that would be wonderful so people can review that. Especially for my cataloging friends here, we want to make sure that we have downloaded all of our label templates for our spine labels, all of our copy templates, and we'll be looking at the new interface for those so that if your workstation gets reset, you do not lose all that wonderful work. Then when you come in the morning on November 13th, we will be on Evergreen 315, and you can look forward to all of those new features. And I'm going to come back to this at the end when we're done. But for now, let's head over to Evergreen. So I'm here on the test server. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be following along with I'm just going to grab this window so you guys can see it. If you go to the support desk. So this is support.sparkpa.org. And we're going to go to upgrade, which is all the way alphabetically at the bottom of the list. You see your upgrade checklist there as well. And you click through here to feature documentation. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be following along with these cataloging upgrades in the order that they are on the list here. So I'm going to start with record buckets and I'm going to move through all of these different sections. So if you do want to follow along, you can start right here and follow along in the documentation with what I'm going to show you. But first, we have to get logged in. And the first thing that you're going to notice is that you're going to see, this is not something that we are going to have turned on for everybody the first day, but we are using it some in test, and we will be starting to roll it out. So Evergreen 3.15 is the first Evergreen version that has multi-factor authentication available in it. And so I'm going to go ahead and use my one-time password to be able to log into that. Elizabeth is holding a meeting and discussion to start talking about how we may want to do that rollout in a couple weeks here. And so, well, none of it will be required that first day, that Thursday that we go to Evergreen. That is something that we're going to be continuing to talk about as we continue to talk about improving the security of everything in our consortium. So I'm all logged in, and I'm going to start here with too many windows. So we are going to start with the updates to the record buckets interface. And where we are going to go here is cataloging record buckets, which we're already familiar with. And this is going to give us a brand new interface. So this whole interface got a facelift. So everything is going to look just a little bit different. And you will see a bunch of things where the functionality is the same. And I'm also going to go over some things where we've actually got some new functionality that we are going to be reviewing in this particular interface. So what I first want to show you is just kind of a general overview of the interface. And so similarly to when we pull it up right now, we've got My Buckets, which is going to list all the buckets that your account is the owner of. And so those should be things that you're used to seeing when you're in the current interface. One of the brand new things that we have is we have the ability to add a star to items and move those into a favorites tab. And so you can do that by clicking the little star, and you're going to see here, it's in my little favorites tab. It is also available then in the actions menu. So this is where you're going to start to see some of the new functionality with record buckets. Is when we look at these actions, we're going to see some things that we haven't seen before. One of them is share. One of them is remove from favorites or add to favorites. And you'll see both of those options. And then one of the brand new functions is share bucket. And if we go to share bucket, then what's this going to do is to give us a view of who currently has permissions for this bucket, and then give us the opportunity to add new people with permissions to this bucket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give Elizabeth permissions to this bucket. And so we're going to select her, and then it's going to show us, oh, yep, you've given this person view permissions. I can also give people edit permissions, and then I can also share with entire library locations or systems. I'm logged in with an admin account, so I'm seeing everybody. I think normally you'll see only your local library system. But I can share this with either individual locations or with the whole system. So this is really helpful if you're doing projects together with other staff and you want to be able to show it to a bunch of people all at the same time. We can also now share it, as I mentioned, just with individual users. And so what we'll see here is I can actually see these are the things that I have shared with other users. And then we do have some bugs. You'll see the visible to me option is kind of grayed out. That has to do with just the number of buckets that are in our system right now, and well, the number of shared buckets that, because they were created under the old interface, are shared. So what I'm going to recommend is that if you are going to share a bucket with someone, is you do the same thing that you would do now, which is to make a note of the bucket number. You will need to go ahead and share it either with that person's individual login or with the library or library system. So you'll want to go ahead and update the sharing, and then you're going to want to give them that bucket number. And then once they have the bucket number, what they can do is they can pull it up via this search interface. And that way you're not going to have to manage the bugs that are affecting the shared with me and visible to me interfaces. And then those are things that are in development right now, and we'll hopefully have those fixed very soon. But this gives you the opportunity to just go ahead and bring up a bucket that you have permissions for. Okay, so this is my favorite thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new bucket. And we're going to go ahead and we can sort this list so that we can get to our brand new bucket. And what we're going to do is we're going to click here on the title of the bucket, which is going to take us into this bucket view. Now we created a new bucket. There's nothing in here. And so what we're going to do is we are going to, and this is something that I know I have been advocating for in Evergreen for years. I know many other catalogers have been really excited about this. What we're going to do is we're going to add items to this bucket in batch. So we're going to hit the upload button. In our database, the bib IDs and the TCNs are the same, but they're not in all databases. So for us, it doesn't really matter which one we choose. And you'll see something very similar to what you would see in item status or in the user buckets, which is that you have the option to choose a text file or a CSV file to upload. You can also, and this is new in this interface, if those IDs are not in the first column, then you can tell it, oh, they're in the third column, something like that. In this case, because I'm demoing it, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste in some things. And so I'm going to just paste these. You can paste them from Excel if you've run a report, or from if you've been making notes of things as you're going along, you can type them in. The biggest use case for this is for reports. If I run a report on something, or I have things that I've gotten a list of TCNs from staff, then I am able to grab all of those and import. In this case, I guess I gave it one that was deleted. So it's going to give me all but the one that was deleted. And so it's gone ahead and loaded my bucket with those things. So to be able to, run a report from the Evergreen reporter and then upload things is just really powerful, and we're really excited about it as a way to help us with bibliographic management. And it's something that has been in, you can do it with items because you can do upload the CSV of barcodes to item status and then move it over to item buckets that way. But we haven't had a way to do it for bibliographic record buckets. And so I'm very excited about that. And I think a lot of us are going to make good use of that particular functionality. Now you'll see then, now that we're in the bucket and we've loaded things in the bucket, these are going to be mostly the same options that you're going to see in the current record buckets interface. We have our merge interface. We have some options for moving them around. So we can add them to a different bucket, which keeps them in this bucket and adds them to a separate bucket. We can move them to a different bucket, which removes them from this bucket and puts them in the different bucket. We can just remove them. We can export the record, which is going to give us a MARC file. So those are going to be pretty much the same actions. One thing I do want to mention is we have a couple of buttons here. One is open selected a new tab. So something that you'll notice is if I click on one of these titles, it's going to load, it's going to replace my current tab. Whereas if I want them to open in new tabs, I can let's see, if I don't have it selected, no, I can't use the right click menu because that's such the actions menu. So what I need to do is open selected and new tabs, and that's going to open those in tabs for me. The other thing I can do that's kind of interesting is I can do show and catalog results, and that is going to open a new tab, and it's going to just give me a catalog search result. That's the records that I selected. So if I want to be able to page through them, you know, to go back and forth in the search results interface, that's a nice way to be able to do that. So that's some new functionality. And I think I have covered, you'll see, you know, it's still a grid interface. So we've got some tabs that aren't normally turned on here. You can do date added to bucket. If this is a bucket that you're using in an ongoing way, you can see when they're added to the bucket. You can sort by any of these column headings. And of course, if you make any changes, you want to go to Save Grid Settings. And the other thing that I want to mention is that there are a number of other ways to add items to a bucket. And most of those we're going to be familiar with. You're going to be able to add items to a record bucket by adding them to a basket and then doing basket to bucket from the catalog search results. You can also add them to record buckets now from the item status interface. And so we are going to, so we've got both add to item bucket and add to record bucket here right at the top of our actions in item status. And then another way that you can add items or bibliographic records to bibliographic record buckets is that there's an automated way to do this now from the reporter if you're doing a report of bibliographic items. So obviously you can do the report, you can look at the output, and then you can either paste those TCNs into the upload interface like I showed you earlier, or you can save the file and upload it that way. There's also a way in the reporter to transfer that over now, and Elizabeth is going to cover that in the reports training next week. So definitely come hang out for that one or watch the video. So those are the main things that I want to cover, which is the sharing and the bulk adding things to the buckets, as well as just an overview of the new interface. Elizabeth and Natalie, I haven't been watching the chat. Are there any questions that people have that I should be addressing here in my Record Buckets chat?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. We will have time for Q&A later, but does anybody have questions about record buckets? Or Elizabeth and Natalie, did you notice anything that I missed that you would like me to touch on?
No, I just want to say that this is the first in development, and so item and patron buckets will also be getting updated after this development is complete.
Yep. So this is some of you may have heard us talk about angularization. This is the angularization of the buckets interface, and that will be coming to those other interfaces as well. One of the reasons that we wanted to do record buckets first was to add that batch upload capability that was available in the other two kinds of buckets, but not for bibliographic records. Given a couple seconds of silence to let people think about it if they have questions. Okay. So the next thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about monographic parts. Now, as anybody who's been to a cataloging committee meeting knows, this is something that because we are a consortium where some, but not all of our libraries use monograph parts, many of our sister consortia, either they say, okay, everybody needs to use them for certain scenarios, or they say, okay, nobody uses these. Because we have a mix of workflows, this can be, monograph parts can be a little bit confusing. So I am going to kind of start at the beginning here and talk a little bit about how we handle these and how the development changes are going to impact us. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a record that has monographic parts. So this is in this case, a travel guide that's updated every year. And so York Library, excellent, wonderful cataloging staff. They do a great job of doing the upkeep that is required for these monographic parts. And so what we're going to see here is we're going to see, okay, this is a record that has parts on it, and we can tell in a couple of ways. First of all, while not everything that's serials and magazines has monograph parts, anything that has monograph parts needs to be in this serials and magazines category. And then we're going to see that we even the York folks have added this note in the call number spot so that we can all see it right up front here, that it has parts. Then we're also going to see here, why is my record note not displaying? So there should be a record note here that reminds us that this is a record. Here we go. Okay, just needed a little refresh. YCLS is using monograph parts with this record. So other places, other library systems should use their own record, either with their own set of parts or without parts, depending on what their workflow is. And then we're going to see in the monograph parts here tab, we're going to see what the parts are. So when you encounter a record that is like this, we ask that if you are not the library, this is, usually it is don't create duplicates, don't create duplicates. This is a scenario where we need some duplicates for the holds to work correctly. Because what monograph parts lets you be able to do is the patron to select which of these parts they're actually requesting. And so we have people who use it for magazines, we have people who use it for certain types of manga and graphic novels, and we have people who use it for things like these sort of either trade publications or other things that come out annually, Farmer's Almanac kind of thing. And so this is a place where we need some duplication. So, all right, this record is perfect. It's got all the notes on it that it's going to tell us that it's got parts on it. It's beautiful. Here is what is changing. What is changing, and we are not, this is a library setting, so we're not going to turn it on the first day. But because we're going to do some cleanup on our end about making sure we're ready to do this. but we have this setting turned on in the test server, and we'll be in communication with you all about what this timeline is. Once we turn on the setting, it will mean that if a record has parts, you cannot add a new item to it without assigning a part to it. So what this means for those of you who don't use Monograph Parts, is if you ever encounter this, that it is requiring you to add a part, and you'll see this red, and then if we did add the other required elements, it's not going to let you save it. It's going to give you that little exclamation point because we haven't given it a part. And then if we give it a part, then it would let us save it. So if you were to see this and you're not going to assign a part to this item, then you need to do one of two things. If it is something where you're like, oh, yep, you're right, I see it. This is something where it's got parts and I need to use a different record. Okay, I'm going to find a different record. Wonderful, fantastic. The other thing that you may see is you're like, oh, well, this is something where only one thing has a part, or I see York's got some holdings on here and other libraries have holdings on here. And so that's when you're going to need to put in a support ticket with us, and we will help sort it out. What we're going to do cleanup wise is to make sure that we are starting out without everything that has parts. Any record that has parts only has things with parts, and we don't have any records that are mixed. So it should be, hopefully, that you would only see that required part when it's a record that is supposed to have parts. But because bad merges happen, and because sometimes people create a part, we're gonna, we will have to do some support around making sure that we're doing that maintenance. And so please just let us know if you see that and it doesn't seem to be in a place where it should be. If you see that required part. And again, we will let people know when we're going to change that setting, and I'm sure we'll be able to do a cataloging committee meeting to refresh everybody about Monograph Parts and all of those things. The other quick thing that I wanted to show you is that we do have some new columns available. So if you look at the columns that are available in the current Monograph Parts interface, it is just ID and label. That's it. That's all you get. So now we get the creator and the editor, we get the create date and the edit date. When you see this admin, that is something where this 7/16, I believe, is the date that we updated the test server. And so these were parts that were already there. And so they're just showing that create and edit date from the date that the server was updated, because that's when those fields became available. As people edit those, and because this is the test server, I can add one. And then you'll be able to see, oh, yep, Katie made this, and she made it in October. And even though it is the test server, it doesn't really matter. I'm still going to delete it because it doesn't belong on there. So that is the big change to Monograph Parts, is the ability to have that setting, which says if a record has parts, all new items added to that record must have parts. We are planning to turn it on, but we need to do a little bit of cleanup first. So we will keep you all posted on how that is coming. Something else that is changing with Monograph Parts is the ability to manage them in bulk. So if we are in, go to the holdings editor. So we're going to do edit items. And you're going to see that we now have the option to look at both of these parts here. And I'm going to have to remind myself.
Click the batch actions option under holdings.
Thank you. So what we'll be able to do here would be to select a part and then batch apply that to all of our items. Thank you, Elizabeth. There are also some other changes in the holdings editor that I want to show you all. But I'm going to close out of this so I don't edit these parts, even though we're on the test server. Does anybody have questions about the Monograph Parts stuff? I know that can be a little bit of a sticky wicket. So let me just pause for a second to see if anybody wants to ask for any clarification on that one.
I do want to remind people that you shouldn't be using other libraries' parts as well. So if you see the note in the bib call number, just find another record. Shouldn't use other libraries' parts because it makes things more complicated for holds purposes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we want all of those parts to be on separate records so that each library has its own, or each library system has its own set of parts. Okay, I'm going to show some of our things here in the holdings editor. I don't need this one. Okay, so we'll see we've got some little kind of graphical updates to the holdings editor here in terms of how it looks. And we have the batch actions here where we can change. I do love batch changing the call number. Boop, so exciting. And so that is helpful. And then the brand new thing that I want to show you here is this administration tab. So you've still got your templates here, and you've got the apply template here. So you can apply the template to the holdings, but instead of having the buttons here about new template, save template, so on and so forth, we've got a whole other template here or a whole other tab here called administration. And that is where we're going to see all of our holdings template stuff. And so what we're going to be able to do then is we're going to be able to actually see our holdings templates in kind of abstract. So we're not seeing them in the context of an item. We are seeing them in just as the template. This is what will be applied when you hit the button. And so we can go in and we can edit these templates without editing item information, and we can see exactly what it's going to set and it's not going to set. That also allows us to we can kind of reset them. We can do a bunch of things. So I really like that. I like being able to see them kind of abstractly that way. I think that's going to be really helpful for folks. And this is also then where that import and export comes in. So I do want to remind everybody, please export your holdings templates on November 12th if you do use them. And then if your workstation gets cleared, then you will be able to import them right here and see them in this new administration interface and work with them in this new template editor. So I think that's a big improvement on that interface and being able to see it kind of separately from the item that you're editing. Again, if you create a new one, you're also going to create it instead of creating it while you're creating an item, you're going to go ahead and create it kind of in this separate interface, and then it'll be available for you to use from then on out. So I'm excited about that. I think it's definitely an improvement on the existing interface. The other thing that is a little bit different is the alerts, notes, and tags interfaces. And so for those of you who are using copy notes and or copy tags, it's actually going to show us any existing copy tags and let you add more as well. Direct link over to that manage tag interface so that we can see, oh, you see my sample one here for DESB. And so we can click over and do that. Right now, you could you can easily add tags, you can see the tags, you can add notes and alerts, but if you were editing multiple items, you weren't going to be able to see the existing ones. So it made it harder to manage things. And so in 3.15, they've improved that functionality dramatically to be able to see existing ones as well as to add new ones and to be able to do all of that either singly or in batch. And so that is a really nice change. I believe we can also, I was trying to remember if we needed, I do think so we can add alerts here from the from item status. It's going to boot us over into the same alert, so it's going to show us the existing ones as well as allowing us to do new ones. I believe you could add more alerts, but you couldn't see the existing ones from item status, so that is a nice improvement as well. Natalie, I know you wrote a bunch of the documentation on those new features in terms of the holdings editor. Did I miss anything that would be good to cover?
No, I believe you covered everything. Just that
Okay.
also with the alert tags and notes, that those could also be saved within the templates as well.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yep.
So that was something where it like I think you could do alerts in the templates, but it didn't always apply. And I don't think you could do notes and tags as part of the templates previously. And so that is really important. Thank you, Natalie. Is that when we edit that, if we want to then go in and add notes, alerts, and tags, especially for our friends who are here who use like the memorial tags, or I know some of my libraries here in Blair County, if it's something that the Friends of the Library brought and they bought for the library, they use a tag for that. And so being able to put that in the template is really helpful because then you've just got your one click and it's going to go ahead and enter all that data. So having that available in the tags as well is really nice. Also for our libraries that use alerts for things like number of discs or other, like scenarios where you have hotspots or board games or any number of things where you need to have an alert pop up in some or all situations. Being able to have that in the template is really convenient. So that is beautiful. Thank you, Natalie. Couple of other quick things before I pause for questions here. One of the things that has it's a tiny thing, but it bothers me in Evergreen 3.13 is that if I right click over here, it doesn't give me the actions menu. It gives me the Chrome right click menu. And if I'm right clicking in a grid, I want the actions menu. So that's been made much more consistent, where you should be able to click anywhere in the grid and get the appropriate actions menu. And then they also made some changes to like the coloration of these rows. I think particularly if we're in dark mode, these were a little harder to see with some of the different highlighting. And so they've made some updates there. Okay. I believe that is all of my holdings related updates. Just a quick reminder for those of you who do cataloging, the unified holdings and item attributes display is something that I will always remind people about because it's something that gets reset when your workstation gets reset. If this is unchecked, then you're going to have your holdings tab over here and your item attributes tab over here, and they're going to be separate. If you are a library that's cataloging a bunch of things at the same time, this can be really fantastic because you don't have to get so scrolly with everything. But on the other hand, I find that I personally and many catalogers prefer to have it all together on one page, just a little bit less clicky. So then we're just going to click that button, and then it's going to give us all of that together on one page. So that's not new. I just like to throw it in there. Okay. Questions about templates, batch editing items, notes, tags, things of that nature. Okay. So I'm going to go in and do some showing you things in the MARC Editor interface. Now, this isn't something that all of us interact with on a real regular basis. And of course, I've picked something that when the test server was updated was an acquisitions record, so it's not a great record. This one has definitely been overlaid on the production server. But I did just want to show you a couple of things for those of you who do use the MARC Editor. And partially because these were things that were pointed out by Spark catalogers that they documented us when we were doing testing a year ago for the 3.13 upgrade and are now fixed. So one of the things that's new is we've improved the ability to move around in this interface with just the keyboard. So for those original catalogers who like to use just the keyboard, you're going to see an improved ability to be able to do that. So right now, if I'm in a field and I'm tabbing across the indicators to my subfield, it selects the subfield, and then if I hit tab again, it would move over to this add a new subfield button, which it still does, but that's the only option right now. Right now, if instead of hitting tab again, I hit enter, no, I'm sorry, I have to hit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tab over, and then I'm going to hit my right arrow key, and that's going to allow me to be directly into that field, and then use shift tab to move in between the indicator and the actual field. I don't believe there was a way to do that with the keyboard previous to this, so improved use of tab and arrow keys there is very helpful. We also, this has always been here and I forget about it. So there's this button called special characters, and it just brings up this thing, and you're like, oh, I'm cataloging something in Swedish, so I'm gonna need this weird, I shouldn't say it's weird, but it's this diacritic that I don't usually have to use. And so it's going to copy it, and then I can insert it. This is particularly nice if you are, if you've opened up something and the diacritics did not transfer over correctly. And so you're seeing, you know, question marks instead of, say, the Enya or something like that. So that's always been there, and I tend to forget about it. We've also got all kinds of different punctuation marks that we may not know where they are on our keyboards and things like that. But the new upgrade is that if you do control, if you're in your MARC record and you control S, it'll bring that right up for you without having to navigate to the button, and then you can tab through and you can hit enter, and it's going to copy that character for you. So that's nice for those of us who prefer to use just our keyboards while we're using the MARC Editor. The other thing that you will see, and it depends, so what we're gonna see, and I'm looking at it, it's different in different formats. But what we're gonna start to see is we're gonna start to see these separate boxes for these multi-value fields. And so now if we can have 3 different entries in this contents field, and it's going to give us 3 different drop downs. That's so we can use the drop down for each one of those instead of only being able to use it for the first one. And I'm going to show you one that's not a serial because I think it's going to display a little bit differently. Yeah, so the other place that we're going to see it, and this is where many of us are going to interact with it more, is for the illustrations. So we're going to see a separate drop down for each of the 4 illustration spots. So you don't have to remember that I is for coats of arms. I will never retain that. And so it's nice to be able to go ahead and select those separately. And I think that I covered all of those bug fixes. And we talked about some of the bug fixes in the Holdings View editor earlier. So I think that is all of my topics. Questions? Anything that I missed? Spark friends and/or cataloging friends? In the meantime, please feel free to log in to test.sparkpa.org to play with these new features and see them. Obviously, there are some bugs that are impacting us here, and we're going to continue to work with our various vendors to get those corrected. And we also are in conversations with some of the other consortia that have already upgraded about some of the different things that they've done for multi-factor authentication and things like that. So the more that we hear from you folks about what you like, what you don't like, what is working for you, what's not working for you, the better off we will be. So I appreciate everybody's time. And
Katie,
yes.
Oh, go ahead,
there's a
Elizabeth.
question. There's a question in the chat from
Oh.
Ian.
Is hiding the left column on the, I think left column, the faceting. So yes, that is new, and that is probably something that Natalie will be covering in Circuit OPAC training. But yes, we can show and hide our facets. Ooh, and I can see my recent buckets. That's always exciting. And the show more and fewer details is not new. I always have the more turned on, but a lot of people like the shorter view. Probably most of you will want the show facets turned on. I think a lot of people like those, but it does, especially on a narrower screen, it's going to give you a lot more real estate for that view. I've got a nice wide screen, but if you're looking at this on, especially if you were looking at it on like a tablet or a cell phone or something, that would be nice to be able to have less real estate taken up over to the left. So thanks, Ian. That wasn't one I had played with yet.
Katie.
Yeah.
This is Leslie from Berks.
Hi, Leslie.
Hi. Can you, were you planning to, I guess maybe not, showing how you can add items from this screen to buckets?
Sure. It is going to be the same that it is right now, which is that we are going to select things and we are going to put those things into our basket. by selecting them, and then we're going to do add basket to bucket, and then it's going to give us our list of buckets, and then we're going to be able to go ahead and add them to there. We can also do a new bucket if we want to create a new bucket, and if it's and this is something that I'm glad you mentioned, Leslie, because there was something that I missed. So existing buckets this is gonna give you the list of buckets of which you are the owner. Shared buckets, you're gonna have to put the ID in, and then it's going to allow you to do that if you have permissions for that bucket. So let me show you something that is new that I missed when I was doing record buckets, which is that you can now transfer ownership of a bucket. So if you have somebody, you have a cataloger who's leaving, or you have a CERT person who's been working on a project where they've made put a bunch of items into record buckets, and you want to transfer that over from them, what we can do is transfer bucket ownership. And then that's going to give us that same search for user. And then we can transfer ownership of that bucket, it shows up in their list of of buckets in that drop down from the basket actions. The other thing that's new, it's a little bit different, is we've still got this option to search the catalog directly from the bucket. But it works differently than it works currently. Currently, when you use that search button in the buckets interface, it's going to give you that list of items right there in the bucket view, and then you can add them to the bucket if you want. What this is going to do now is it's going to open a new tab with a catalog search. It's going to run that catalog search, and then you're going to do that same thing that we would have done, which is to select items and do the basket to bucket action. So that is, the functionality itself isn't different, but that certainly does look different than the way that it looks right now.
Oh, I actually meant on the side there, under place hold.
Oh, and I will admit, this was under
To the right, to the right.
Oh, yes. So this is going to give us, thank you.
Yep.
This is going to give us that same interface. So if we want to add one at a time to a bucket, if we click on it, it's going to let us select here. This is the same interface that we get from the basket to bucket. And we can do that same thing. We can create a new bucket, or we can give it the ID of a shared bucket. And then it's also going to let us, this is nice to give us the drop down for our favorites and for our recent ones that we've used. I don't like this as much because I don't find that people add items to buckets singly very often, but you absolutely can do it that way. And I especially like that it's going to give you that favorites, because for those of us who have, like, this is my one that I use when I need to merge records, and I named it A merge so it would stay at the top of the list. But now with the favorites button, I'm going to be able to pick that there. And I just see on the chat that Elizabeth is noting, this is only, it says add to bucket. This is only record buckets. This is not, you can't add everything that's attached to the item bucket. We're in a bibliographic view, and so it's giving us the option to add to a bibliographic record bucket. Okay. Thank you so much, Leslie. That was something that I had neglected to point out. Okay. Natalie, will you stop the recording, please?